Okay. I see a lot of people talking about this interview, and I think it's pretty clear what is going on, like logically. Uh, but still, I want to look at the numbers to show like how ridiculous this is. So let's listen to the argument from Nick Fuentes, and let's see the challenge from Piers Morgan. Then we're gonna look at the numbers, and I'm gonna show some math to explain like why uh, this doesn't make any sense. Let's take a look.
To get executed. And
Out
so
of
as a white
interest,
person,
how do you feel about mass shootings at school?
I think they're bad.
Who do you think commits the vast majority of the mass shootings?
I'm sure
in
it's
schools?
white people.
Right. So how do you feel about that?
I think that white people do more antisocial violence. I think black people participate in more gang violence. I think that's the difference.
What's the difference to the victims?
There's no difference to the victim, but it's a different kind of crime. And it's a different proportion also. Do you know what percentage of white people are school shooters?
I know that the vast majority of mass shootings in schools in America this century were perpetrated by young white men. And I'm
And
just
what proportion of what proportion?
I'm curious.
What proportion?
I'm curious whether your advice would be to people who have kids in
Wait,
these
is my
schools.
mic working?
Should they?
What proportion?
Should they avoid?
All right. So Nick Fuentes is gonna keep asking what proportion, and Pierce is never gonna answer that. So let's look at what that number is. So here I have some reference. Mass shooters by race, demographics of assailants, 1966, 2024. So in this document, they actually provide per capita, the numbers per capita. So that's interesting. And the number that we are looking at is 0.05 per 100,000. Now, so that's the number like per capita, but I want to just calculate it just to make sure. So the population of the United States is around 300,000, 340 million, and then the document says like 58 of those are white, right? So white people are that. Okay, so how many? Like 197 million. And then the mass shooters that were white in this period is 103. So it's just that by the other. So white people who committed mass shootings 103. So we just divide that by the total number of white people, and that's 0.0000, like 6 zeros and a 5. So I'm gonna save this as rate. And then to make it per capita, multiply this by 100,000. So that's 0.05. Exactly what this document says. 0.05 per 100,000. Can I make it bigger? Per 100,000 people. 0.05. So that's the proportion. It's pretty low, and actually if we convert this, so probability is low, the rate is per capita is low. Now let's do it like 1 in how many? Basically 1 in 2 million, around that. Okay, that's the number that Piers is never gonna give for obvious reasons.
Should they avoid white people at school? Should people with the kids at school avoid young white men at school?
No.
Okay.
Do you know what per capita means? Do you know proportionality? There are more black people proportionally that engage in violent crime or are involved in gangs, especially in these major cities, than there are white people that are school shooters compared to the entire white population. And everybody understands that.
Two-thirds of mass shootings at school perpetrated by white people.
But what proportion of white men commit school shootings? That's the question.
I've just told you. It's 60 to 65% of school shootings by white people.
You're telling me what proportion of school shootings are committed by white people. I'm saying what proportion of white people have committed school shootings. Are you playing dumb, or are you just not that smart?
What difference does that make
to
the children lying dead on the ground?
So this is what I don't understand, because if you know anything about probability, is that so you have the probability of A given B, which is different from the probability of B given A. So the denominator is different. So the probability of so this per capita number 0.05 will matter if you already are in a mass shooting. Like if you know that you are in a mass shooting, then it will then you should worry more about white people than black people, because in total they are more. But that's not the situation. That's not the denominator. The denominator is a black person or a white person, not like in a given that you are in a mass shooting. Who should you worry about? Nobody cares about that.
See, now you want to jump on the victims. The difference is you're asking, would you fear white people or black people? And that's the difference. The difference is in terms
what I'm saying to you is, by your logic, if we now have agreed that the vast majority of mass shootings in schools are committed by white people and predominantly young white men, then presumably your advice would be to avoid young white men because they perpetrate these.
If you are in a mass shooting, sure, that will make sense, but that's not what we're talking about.
Massacres. But it won't be because they're white, right?
So are you playing dumb, or are you actually dumb?
Maybe
it's
I'm
about
dumb.
proportionality.
Maybe I'm dumb.
You are because you're, well, I don't think you are dumb. I think you're smart actually, but you're deliberately avoiding per capita. And everybody knows that's the difference. What proportion of white men are school shooters? It's probably 0.00001%. What proportion of black men have committed violent crimes? It's probably like 5%. I guess I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it's very high.
Yeah, it's 0.0000. How many is that? Like 4, 5, 6, 5. But to make it percentage, it's like that, something like that. 0.005. Let's see. Is that one? Sorry. Yes, 0.00405%.
And I would add to that, even as it concerns schools, why do you think parents pay a super high property tax to live in a school district where there's white people? Because they know that if they go to the black school, it's going to be the Bloods and the Crips. It's going to be gangs. It's going to be, you know, you talk about school shootings. Nobody talks about all the school shootings that are committed by gangbangers in and around the school, and all the other violence that's associated with that. I mean, these schools in the south side of Chicago, you know, it's just not livable.
I have
it's
an
not
answer
workable.
for you, Nick. So the proportion of the population who carry out mass shootings is actually the same for black and white.
For white people, the proportion of
the proportion
again,
of the population.
are you hearing it? No.
See,
What's
I think the trouble with
proportion?
your statistics is a lot of them don't bear much scrutiny. We have a bunch of fact checkers checking all this in real time because you do have a tendency to just come out with a lot of old baloney. And when you say, you know,
okay,
well, it's true. And when you're confronted with reality,
figure?
You don't like it.
What's the figure? What proportion of white people have committed school shootings? With white people as the denominator and white people that have committed school shootings as the numerator, what's that percentage?
For both black and whites, the proportion of the...
That's not what he asked. He wants the number. He wants this 0.00005. That's what he wants. Why? I'm going to show why.
Population who carry out mass shootings generally is about the same.
No. Yet, tell me the number, and then
the only focus of your attention is the black shootings, the black crime. You don't want to live around black people. You want to avoid black people. You don't want interracial marriages or relationships that may produce black people. And yet, when I point out to you that there are many parts of crime in America where actually there's a majority of white people that perpetrate them, you don't care. You don't have any interest in that. It doesn't exercise your mind. Maybe because
no one's buying this. This
kids.
argument lost. No one is buying this. Everybody understands per capita, and people can even see what you race ahead and say, well, we're comparing the proportion of white and black school shooters. I said, no, compare the proportion of school shooters that are white versus violent criminals that are black, because that was the basis of the monologue, is that you're...
Right, so violent people that are black. Actually, it's people who commit homicide, but... Let's see. I found this document is homicide rates across county, race, ethnicity, age, and sex in the U.S. So this is the relevant graph where it shows homicides per 100,000 population. Actually, all right, yeah, let's look at this. I mean, this number is actually wrong. And I'm gonna show why, but for now let's assume it's correct. So now this is divided in age groups: 15 to 24, 25 to 44, 45 to 64, and above 65. And of course, the biggest being in any group, acceptations, I guess, is 15 to 44, basically. Now, I already did the weighted average of all of these, just to simplify the math, and it's around 45. But later we're gonna look at these two bins. But for now, let's just say it's 45 per 100,000 for adults, and by adult we're gonna mean 15 and above. So it's 45 per 100,000. So 45 per 100,000. That is the rate. Actually, the probability. 0.045. So this rate, I'm gonna say R1. That's gonna be R1. R2 is gonna be this, which we just got. So if we divide one by the other, sorry, that's 800 times bigger. That's why Piers doesn't want to show that number, but that number is wrong, because this is from 1966 to 2024. So that's, let's see how many years. That's 58 years. So we have to divide that, actually. So it's white people who committed mass shootings in any given year divided by white people, which is around what? 1.7. So around 2 per year, because now we have to compare apples to apples, and this number here is just in 1 year. It's 45 per 100,000 in 2019. So we have to do it by year. Okay, so now it's actually 50,000. That's actually what we're talking about. 50,000 times more likely that somebody's gonna be murdered by a black person than murdered in a school shooting by a white person. That's why Nick Fuentes wants the two numbers. This is actually not correct, because basically most of these are males, so we can divide by 2, and then the rate is a little bigger, and that now it's like 25,000, but it's still a lot. Like, if most people who commit white people who commit mass shootings are males, then it's not white people, it's white males that should be the denominator. But anyway that you look at it, like, it's way more, way more. The homicide rate, and this is not what we're talking about, because really what we're talking about is this 75, like the young population. But let's continue.
You're very likely, if you encounter black people or a young black man in the city, that you're going to be the victim of a violent crime, of a robbery, a mugging, a car theft, a carjacking, or a murder. That's the difference, and it's about proportionality. And everybody sees past that, because we all live in reality. You want to talk about product of your environment. People that live in New York, Chicago, LA, we live in reality. We live in this environment, and we see what it's like. And the threat, the danger in terms of probability it's not even comparable. And I would say this to your point. if you're in a high school and truly, if you see a white person who looks like a little autistic, he's got the SSRI stare and he reaches for a backpack, people joke and say, run. Similarly, if you see a jalopy pulling up with a bunch of black people in it and they got their pants around the ankles, you're going to run also. And
yeah, okay. So, I think that's enough of the video. I think they're just gonna repeat that. But I want to like drill down on, okay, first I have to explain a little bit of math, because this is like, what is the probability in 1 year? And we can just multiply that to make it 2 years and so on, but that's actually not the right math. For example, if we throw a die, the probability of getting heads is 1 in 6. But if we say like, okay, in 2 tries, what is the probability that we're gonna get heads once? That's a little bit more complicated, but we can start by first saying like, what is the probability of getting 2 heads? That's 1/6 square. Actually, I'm just gonna save. No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, and then the other number of interest is the opposite. Like, what is the probability that we are not gonna get heads in 2 tries? And that's this. So it's around 70%. And then we can just do 1 minus that, and that's actually the probability that we are gonna get heads once in 2 tries. And as we increase, like 4, now it's 50%, now 8, 76%, 10, 80, 84%, 20, that's 97%. Okay, but if we do it from 1/6, that is the probability that we start with, then it's just like this. But to do the same with the other numbers, that this formula is cumbersome, so I'm gonna create a function that is gonna receive the probability, and then n is gonna be like the number of whatever. Okay, so now we can do, for example, f 1/6 20, and we get what? Oh, and we get the same number. But actually what I want is something that is like 1 in 20, 1 in 10, or whatever. So it's going to be 1 over that. So if we start with 1, it's going to be 1 in 6, then 1 in 3, then 1 in 2, and so on. Actually, I can plot this function just to show what it looks like. It's going to be 1 in 6 by x from 0 to 20. This is how it looks. So it's not a straight line. But anyway, this is gonna simplify, because now we can do, like, for example, what is the second rate that we got? It was 0.0045. That was 45 in 100,000. So that's equivalent to 1 in 2000. Okay, now we can use this function with that rate. So we start with 1 and then we get the same. But now the useful thing is that we can say like, okay, in 2 years, what is the probability that a black person, like the same black person, is gonna commit homicide? Now it's 1 in 1000, and then 4 years, 1 in 500, 10 years, 1 in 200, and so on. So if we're talking about a period from 15 to, well, around 70, I guess, that's 55 years. So it's gonna be 1 in 40. Now Nick Fuentes said like 1 in 20. If we make it 100 years, then it's 1 in 22. So that's close, but it's not really realistic. 1 in 55, 55 years is more realistic, so that's like 1 in 40. That's a lot, still. But here we are talking about an average of all these people. If we just focus on from 15 to 44, which is around 30 years, the rate is around 72 per 100,000. So 72 per 100,000 in let's just make it exact. From 15 to 44. 44 minus 15. So that's 1 in 48. So basically 1 in 50. Piers said 1 in 100. Not quite. But still 1 in 100 it's a lot. Anyway. So this is bad. This is already bad. But that's not even the worst. Actually, how if we do it like 24. Okay, so in this period of 9 years, still is 1 in 150 the probability. But if we go down, there is this graph, this map. Here we see like black versus others around the country, right? Because that was the average in the whole country. And some areas there's no problem, but in some areas clearly there's a problem. And here is like these red areas say it's like 250, not 75, 350 per 100,000. And then we can do the same. Considering this same period of years, what does 340, no, and 50 mean? 1 in 10. In a period of 30 years, the likelihood that a black person is gonna commit homicide in one of these areas is 1 in 10. That's what the math shows. That's it. Like let's do it for 1 year. For 1 year, it says 1 in 285. And we can just divide. This is exactly what the source says. 349 per 100,000. Let's do exactly that. But it's 1 over that. Oh, sorry. There it is. 1 in 286. That's the same that the function returns. Well, this function was 350. It's exactly the same thing. And as you increase the years, it's gonna be more. That's 1 in 95 in 3 years. 4 years, 1 in 72. 10 years is gonna be 1 in 30. Now we can compare with the other rate. This rate in this apples to apples was let's make it a period of 30 years. $1.8 million. 1 in 1.8 million. So Piers wants us to believe sorry, what was the R2? $45. Okay, yeah. No, but it's not 45. Because that's for everyone. We want to make it like uh, these two, because people are not really worried about 65-year-old people. These like 15, 30, this range from 15 to 45. So that's on average around 72. So that's gonna be the actual rate we care about, 72 per 100,000, and then we compare. This is white males that commit school shootings, mass shootings, 1.8, 1 in 1.8 million. And this is black males, 15 to 45, 1 in 46. Over a period of 30 years, that's apples to apples. So there is no way that these are in any way comparable. Let's
Do you know proportionality? There are more black people proportionally that engage in violent crime or are involved in gangs, especially in these major cities, than there are white people that are school shooters compared to the entire white population. And everybody understands that.
Two-thirds of mass shootings at school perpetrated by white people.
But what proportion of white men commit school shootings? That's the question.
I've just told you. It's 60 to 65% of school shootings by white people.
You're telling me what proportion of school shootings are committed by white people. I'm saying what proportion of white people have committed school shootings. Are you playing dumb or are you just not that smart?
What difference does that make to the children lying dead on the ground?
All right. So yeah, that's the math. The number was this. Actually, 1.8 let's actually do the percentage. 0 point is gonna be 6 zeros, 5 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Then divide by 100, and then by, yes, 0.0000001. That's the number. Yeah, no wonder, percent. No wonder Piers never mentioned it. All right, that's it. Hopefully you find this useful, so that we cut through all this bullshit. All right, cheers.